Hello. Keir Starmer seems to have been very much taken with the TV series Adolescence, and I suppose that shouldn't be a surprise. As far as he's concerned, it would kill two birds with one stone, wouldn't it? The first bird would be the working classes have a propensity for violence which has to be controlled, and the second bird is that the internet is a dangerous place and that needs controlling too. It validates everything he feels he has to do, and make no mistake, Starmer is definitely a man on a mission. Oh, and spoiler alert, if you're reading a novel called Slow Horses or are watching the TV series, I'm going to be mentioning the ending, so if you'd rather not know, here's your chance to bail out before I start. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. Now, some of you may be old enough to remember those Japanese movies of the 1950s. No, I wasn't old enough to go to the cinema in the 1950s. But I did see, I have mentioned, I'm something of a science fiction buff, haven't I? Well, you're getting it again. And in the 1950s, the Japanese were making all sorts of films. Here, I have some pictures. There was, of course, Godzilla. But, you know, he wasn't the only one. This is Gigantis, the fire lizard. This is Rodan. I don't know, there's, what was this one? Yeah, this is Rodan 2, I think. Oh, Varan. No, this one is Varan, sorry. Who's sort of like Godzilla, but he can fly as well. And then there was another movie called The H-Men, of course, which looked more like humans. But the point about them all is they were, well, almost all intimately connected with either radiation or something coming from the hot centre of the Earth, which, as we know, is also radioactive. And it featured, all these films featured a lot of crowd shots of running feet as terrified citizens try to escape the monster that's looming over the pinnacles of the town skyscrapers. I'm bringing this up only to make a point here. Why would a country very recently attacked by nuclear devices make so many films about people running away from gargantuan monsters released by radiation? Oh, I wonder why they should have made all those films. And then let's go to the British films of the 50s and 60s, films like The Mouse That Roared or The Titfield Thunderbolt, where you get a little player on some bigger stage outwitting the big guys. And then, of course, there were all the James Bond and Danger Man. That was Secret Agent to you people in the USA. All attempts to convince ourselves that we may be diminished, but we still mean something. And then there were all those movies the Americans made to work through their fear of communism. There's The Invasion of the Body Snatchers and War of the Worlds and Creature from the Black Lagoon and Them and The Fly, you know, somebody who's taken over by something. I could go on, but of course, time in these videos is limited. Anyway, I'm sure you get my drift. Popular entertainment has for years... just hang on a minute, I'm going to bring Godzilla back because that's a really nice poster. Yeah, I rather like Godzilla, and in one or two of the films he's portrayed as a good guy, strangely enough, or not quite such a bad guy. I think that was in Godzilla vs. Rodan, but yeah, I can't be sure. Anyway, popular entertainment has for years been a way for societies to work through our national fears, our doubts about our place in the world, and our social unease. And right now, Britain is working its way through an existential cultural confusion, which we've inflicted upon ourselves, by the way. I'm not blaming anyone else for it, as suddenly the population is being swamped by alien cultures, and one in particular, which is perceived to be inimical to the British way of life. So you might think, like the Americans were worried about the communists and made films about that. Are we making films about alien invasions or monsters or mind control or such like? Well, no, we're not. Nothing at all. Crickets. Tumbleweed. It's almost as if we're actively trying to ignore that, culturally speaking. Now, I have heard, I don't remember where it was written, but somebody once said that when there's something so horrible that people don't want to think about it, they pretend it's not happening at all. And of course, there are people like me and better than me talking about it all the time on the internet. An internet which has a very dark and grim cloud hovering over it right now. But as for popular entertainment, nothing at all. Nothing. There appears to be, in fact, a determined effort by those in control of our culture to blot it out of their universe. I don't know how many of you have read the recent novel Slow Horses by a writer called Mick Herron. I did mention it right at the beginning. It's been turned into a TV series as well, which I haven't watched, but I did read the book. It's a very good novel. The descriptive writing is excellent. The psychology of the characters, very well drawn. The characters themselves, an interesting mix. The plot is well constructed and tight. There's no flab on it at all. Well done, Mr. Herron. It's also a complete cop-out. Now, as I warned you at the beginning, I'm going to outline the plot. A young man is kidnapped. His masked and hooded, his hooded and gloved figure is broadcast on various media tied to a chair with a threat to behead him. And so at first we think it's jihadis. But in the end, it isn't. Guess what? The victim is an inoffensive young chap of integrated Pakistani parentage, who has a very British dream that one day he might be a stand-up comedian. But he's having trouble doing that because he's too nice to handle the sort of edge that a stand-up needs. The apparent jihadis, on the other hand, turn out to be a ragtag bunch of white supremacists who end up killing each other. By the way, at the end, the young chap escapes his captors while they're busy killing each other, and he does that before the white guys who are trying to rescue him actually make it to the scene. And you get the idea that the threat to his life, harrowing though it was at the time, has made a different man of him. As I've said, I don't watch TV, so for all I know, there are many other scripts along the same lines, all pumping out the same message of the immigrant as victim and the white working class as gormless, violent thugs. And now we have Adolescence, featuring an angelic kid who spent too much time on the internet. It's a two-in-one. It's a slam dunk. Not only does Starmer and his ilk, and it seems there's a lot of his ilk about, not only do they get the buzz of having their attitude to the white working class confirmed, but they can also bask in the assurance that the internet is what's whipping them up. And so the obvious answer to that is there has to be a clamp on both of them. And we're seeing those clamps closing in right now. Does anyone believe that the Sentencing Council, which recently issued guidelines that ensure a white man is punished harder than, for example, a recent immigrant for the same crime, does anyone actually believe that this was done without the prior knowledge of the Justice Minister, Shabana Mahmood MP, or our esteemed Prime Minister, Keir Starmer MP, or indeed the rest of the cabinet, for all their protestations that they can't understand why this has happened? Does anyone actually believe they didn't know and that they don't agree? If they didn't agree, surely they'd have been speaking out about Sam Mellier, who got 3 years for sticking "it's okay to be white" on lampposts. And in every mainstream media or information source I have read, is described as a far-right activist. And that just nails him down. Not a husband and father or a concerned person about his particular neighbourhood, for all I know. I don't know. But he's just a far-right activist. Or how about Julie Sweeney, a housewife who got 15 months for a blow up the mosque Facebook post in the wake of the Southport horror? OK, maybe saying blow up the mosque isn't very nice, but the fact is she didn't have any followers who were likely to do that. You just got to look at her to know that. Did any one of the cabinet, or indeed any one of the Labour sheep in those Commons benches behind him, say anything about that? I don't recall seeing anything. Did any one of them make the point that there are British Muslims going through a London suburb threatening the lives and the chastity of the Jews living there, and others beating up police in Manchester Airport, apparently without consequence? No, they have not. Those sentencing guidelines have been going on unofficially all this time. And nobody's spoken out about it. And they're only mentioning it now because even the mainstream media picked up on that one and they had to ask questions. Meanwhile, they've done nothing about it, and while promising to do something, I'd be willing to lay money on nothing at all actually being done. And I'd also lay money on hearing about a lot more mainstream media shows being churned out propagandising about the dangers of the internet and how easily led into evil are our white lower classes. And if you look at this, you'll see it says here, for working parents. I mean, how much clearer can they get about their fear of all parents are working now? Why did they have to say for working parents? They're obviously aiming it, if not aiming it at a certain demographic, aiming it at the middle classes who think of that demographic in that way. There's sinister emojis used by incel teenagers. And we're getting that into our minds, that this is what we've got to be worried about. And that softens us up for laws which will restrict all of this sort of thing. And all we can do right now is call this stuff out for what it is and be aware. Because we're not going to get any help from the media. Even the ones like the Telegraph, which published this list of emojis here. Oh well, let's face it, we've all got to be very careful of the internet. After all, you never know what someone is going to say through that medium, do you? Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.